Hey, good Thursday evening to you, everyone. How are you? It is good to see you. It is good to be seen by you. I, of course, am Bill Sully, a.k.a. the Dungeon Delver, coming to you live from the Delver's Dungeon. And I hope you're having an absolutely wonderful evening, everyone. I am. So the earlier start tonight, the kind of janky start time, I'm actually going to be on with Dylan Duan over on Twitter at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight. He and I will be, well, he has invited me, and I'm sure he has some questions for me, to discuss the Dungeon Delver, which is nice because, once again, I don't have to do anything. I just have to sit there and be my usual charming self. But as to who I am, if you don't know who, excuse me, goopy all of a sudden. As to who I am, if you don't know who I am, I, of course, am Bill Sylvie, the Dungeon Delver, and 5 nights a week, you guys get live stream classic tabletop role-playing game goodness. I bring it to you, is what I do. I bring it to you hot, piping hot on plates. You go to Chili's and you get the fajita plate and they're like, ooh, don't touch that. And it's sizzling when they set it down. That's me. That's what I'm doing. I am the steak fajita platter of old school tabletop role-playing game goodness. And if you are here just by chance, you just came in to get some nachos and a beer, the endless nachos and an ice house or 3. And then you're going to call your Uber or your Lyft and go home. Please consider clicking the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications, and you'll find out that we do this show 5 nights a week. We play classic tabletop role-playing games. We play modern role-playing games, particularly one penned by my Australian co-host, Kyle Schuant. We played some Conflict last night and had a ripping good time doing that. The adventure game of modern combat. And other times, I just bring you some goodness. Sometimes we have interviews. I will have a guest on, typically on Thursday nights. Sometimes it may be someone you don't know. Sometimes it might be a legend from the days of yore from TSR. That's Y-O-R-E, not Y-O-U-R, or Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. But anyway, so yeah, welcome one and all. And it's fun what we do, I'd like to think. But whatever we do, it's brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Games. Hellebarde makes the kind of adventures that they'd like to play, whether it's for 5th edition, for Castles and Crusades, or for the OSR. Old School is in play at the table with Hellebarde Games, and you can find them on DriveThruRPG or on their website, hellebardegames.com. So, tonight, boys and girls, class is in session. That's right, class is in session. We're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about some topics that are salient to good DMing practices in 1st edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Folks, let me tell you something. I firmly believe that everyone has the potential to be a good dungeon master. And dungeon mastering is more than just sitting on this side of that piece of cardstock right there that you can just kind of see a faint corner of and reading off of tables and rolling dice. There is a verve, there is a nuance, there is a rhythm, a style to it. And while it can't all be completely taught, a lot of it is innate. If you have the tools, you may find that deep down inside you've got that. Consider a class of guitar players. Any one of them could be the next Jimmy Page. but all of them won't be. But won't you reach down inside and take the chance and see if it's there? I think you should. And I'm going to tell you something, being a good dungeon master is a lot easier than being a great guitar player. I think it's something that everyone has a great potential to be. And so to that end, not only am I going to talk about some of those topics this evening, and we'll go for about an hour and 15 minutes or so, but I want you guys to ask me questions during this process. Okay, this is not like, did you bring your notebooks? Have you got your tape recorder going? There's going to be a quiz. It's in the method of the greatest fantasy role-playing game book ever written, the first edition, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, a conversation between myself and you folks out there. So please, by all means, if, as I am discussing this, you have a question, I want you to ask me. Don't be shy. The only dumb questions are the questions you don't ask, and then you make a mistake. Those are the only dumb questions, the unasked ones. Now, tonight, I want to tackle something that, honestly, I think is in error. It's in error in that it is where it is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Honestly, it should have been right in the beginning. Now, some of you may know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you may not. Some of you may not have cracked open your first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide yet, but I want you to heed this. This is on page 230, of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I'm about to put this up and get completely demonetized for doing so because of the art associated with it. I could scroll down, but I'm not going to obscure the art of this particular page because it's one of my favorite pieces of D&D art. So let's share screen. I meant to have this up. Share screen, window, there, share. And I'm going to add this to the screen, and we're going to break this down because I think there is a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation and misinterpretation about the afterword in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. And I want to take this apart. I don't think I'm that smart of a person in a lot of ways. I don't think that there's a lot that I do supremely better than anybody else. Guys, I am a damn good dungeon master. I'm a damn good writer, and I'm a damn good dungeon master. Those are two things I can say with surety that I do well, and I will not on the dungeon mastering side, I will not let imposter syndrome raise its ugly head. I will club it right in the noggin because I'm good. I am really good. So I think I have a handle on this passage and can help navigate its paths, let us say. So let's take a look at this. This is the afterword. And again, it should be in the beginning. It really should be in the beginning. This should come before this should be before the foreword, the preface, whatever goes before that. Whatever goes before that, that should be what this is. And of course, this is the international sign for that should be what this is. Or you've got you left your windshield wipers on. So let's take a look at it. I think you guys will know what this is, but I want you read along, listen along, and let's have a gander at this art and listen to this passage. It is the spirit of the game, not the letter of the rules, which is important. Never hold to the letter written, nor allow some barracks room lawyer to force quotations from the rulebook upon you if it goes against the obvious intent of the game. As you hew the line with respect to conformity to major systems and uniformity of play in general, also be certain the game is mastered by you and not by your players. Within the broad parameters given in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons volumes, you are creator and final arbiter. By ordering things as they should be, the game as a whole first, your campaign next, and your participants thereafter, you will be playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons as it was meant to be. May you find as much pleasure in doing so as the rest of us do. Okay. All right. So let's scroll down a little bit here so I don't get too demonetized. And we'll put that in the center. Let's break this down and let's talk about what this means. It is the spirit of the game, not the letter of the rules. Okay, so what is Gary telling us there? It is the spirit of the game and not the letter of the rules. Essentially, what this means is there may be times when something said or done at the table flies in the face of or contravenes the rules. And it's up to you as the dungeon master at those moments to decide, do I cleave to the rules or do I cleave away from the rules? I love the fact that cleave is its own antonym. I think it's the only word in the English language that is. So if you hit on something that it does not work for your campaign, then, if it egregiously goes against your campaign, then remember, it's the spirit of the game. And what is the spirit of the game, you ask? Fun, enjoyment, not just for your players, but for you, the dungeon master, as well. This doesn't just mean your rulings on the rules that you have presented to you in this book. And we'll get to that in the next statement. But what this means is all of the rules should be considered, and you should weight the spirit of the game against them. So, never hold to the letter written. All right? That reinforces what we just said. It's the spirit of the game and not the letter of the rules, which is important. Never hold to the letter written. And now we come to a very important part. Nor allow some barracks room lawyer to force quotations from the rule book upon you. All the way back. Okay, understand, Gary was writing this in 77. Didn't come out till 79. Or 78, rather. But he was writing this in 76, 77. If anyone knew about rules lawyers, it was Ernest Gary Gygax. If in your campaign you're not using weapon versus armor type, and you have a player insisting that because they have a Volge glaive, they should be receiving +4 against all leather armored opponents, and you tell them, I'm not using that, and they say, but it's a rule and it's in the rule book, therefore it should be used, therefore I'm taking the +4 bonus. Don't let them rules lawyer you. Put your foot down and say, I'm not implementing that rule. That rule's never been implemented. I don't implement it for the other players. And more importantly, I don't implement it against you. That's why 8 gnolls with Volge glaives haven't carved your leather armor-clad thief into cutlets. Mythic Mountains RPG. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Love your user handle, too. If it goes against the obvious intent of the game, as you hew the line with respect to conformity to major systems and uniformity of play in general. Now, let's break that down. Conformity to major systems and uniformity of play in general. Well, what are the major systems of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons? There's a lot of mechanics in the Dungeon Master's Guide. There's a lot of I had to start early, Lux. There's a lot of mechanics in the Dungeon Master's Guide and in the Player's Handbook that are fairly inflexible. You know, AD&D doesn't use a spell slot or spell point system. So you shouldn't just tell like one magic user, oh, I like you, use spell points. AD&D doesn't really have firearms in it. And I'm just using these as 4 examples. So uniformity and conformity to major systems is something you're going to want to have broadly across the AD&D experience. Now, it was a lot more important when the Dungeon Master's Guide came out, because back then you had, a lot of tournament play. And I got to tell you guys something, if I can just put on my Angry DM's hat for a second. AD&D was not written just as a set of tournament rules. Well, they were playing a lot of tournament games back then, so they had to have tournament rules, and that's why we ended up with AD&D. That's not it at all. I mean, it's a nice byproduct, but that's not the only reason. They say Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not official tournament rules for Dungeons and Dragons. But the thing is, Gary was approached by, he directly observed, and other TSR employees directly observed huge clubs of Dungeons and Dragons players that had sprung up in universities, in other groups that read the rules in original D&D and interpreted them one way. Some didn't use Blackmoor, some didn't use Greyhawk, others didn't use Eldritch Wizardry, and so on, and etc. And you had a lot of disputes, and people would send into TSR demanding clarification. You have to tell Bob, who's in this group, that he's completely wrong about how psionic powers in Eldritch Wizardry works, because he says it's this, this, and this. And then Bob would write in and say, you have to tell Jim that my interpretation is exactly correct. It was internet arguments over mail. And so these disputes led to the formation and the creation of uniform major systems. So Bob and Jim's group, assuming that they upgraded to first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, would have uniform play. Bob and Jim would have a complete Dungeon Master's Guide that entailed everything at the time that Gary could think of. Monsters were laid out in the monster manual. Players, classes, statistics, abilities, spells, advice to the players was uniform across the board. So those are the major systems and uniformity of play Gary's talking about. Be certain the game is mastered by you and not your players. Now, this and the next part, they're going to sound a little harsh. They're going to sound very adversarial. And if we have time after we discuss this, I want to talk about adversarial DMing, because it's something that is very dear to my heart, and I've held forth on it quite a bit. But let us continue. Be certain the game is mastered by you and not by your players. Your players are there to play and have fun. They're not there to do your work for you. And conversely, the players are there to play. You have ordered your world, your campaign setting around the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rules. They people it. This is not the days of computer games where things can be modded. And I'm not talking about like modern. Back when I was a kid and bootloaders for computer games on my Commodore 64, or even huge chunks of it, were written in BASIC, I could go in and mod games. Don't want those mountains between me and that castle. They're gone. Want more starting gold? I've got it. Back in the 1980s. And I'm sure people, even before then, were doing the same. But they're not doing that here. Gary is saying it's mastered by you and not by the players. Within the broad parameters given in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons volumes, and Gary says right there, the parameters are broad. All right. There is ample room for Dungeon Master flexibility. And that's something that you guys, I hope, as you go forward as Dungeon Masters, you will embrace and understand. You have flexibility. You are creator and final arbiter by ordering things as they should be. Now, this order might seem a little bit cruel. By ordering things as they should be, the game as a whole first, your campaign next, and your participants thereafter, you will be playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons as it was meant to be. Now, that sounds like your players are your last consideration. I look at it differently, and I want you guys to look at it this way too. Have you flown on an airline? If you're standing in the departure lounge, your plane is up to the jet port. It leaves at 8:30. You get there, it's 7:50, 7:45, 7:30. You're going to pay too much money for a turkey sandwich and a bottle of Dasani before you hop on your flight from Milwaukee to Orlando. Take a look at what's being done. The plane isn't just sitting there. If you look out, the pilots are probably sitting in the cockpit. They're going through checklists. They're reading notes. You might see them looking down, flipping switches. You might even see flaps and rudders moving a little bit. If you kind of lean against the glass and you look down there, you're going to see people walking around, literally kicking tires, checking nuts and bolts. Is your first instinct, let me ask you, dear players, to think, why don't they just let us on the plane first? Just let us on the gosh darn plane. Worry about that stuff later. The pilots can check lists once we're in the air. Put a couple extra crewmen on to make sure stuff is tightened. Let's go. No, of course not. You, the Dungeon Master, you have to create a world. You have to create a milieu. You have to create something for the players to be in before they can be in it. You, Dungeon Master, have homework to do. That's what this statement is about. It's not about putting your players at the tail end and not considering their feelings or considerations. First of all, they're going to make their feelings or considerations known to you the minute you're off the ground and wheels up. That's when the adventure starts. That's when they get to live and breathe it. But you need to make sure your campaign world is airworthy first. Not mid-flight, because that can lead to a crash. That's what Gary is telling us here. Make sure your game world is airworthy. then worry about handing out peanuts and headphones and Coca-Colas and extra pillows and turning off the seatbelt sign for a few minutes. That's what Gary is saying here. May you find as much pleasure in so doing as the rest of us do. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. That's the essence of what Gary is saying here. You have a lot of work to do. As long as your world is consistent to the broadly understood major systems laid out in the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, and the Player's Handbook, and you have created an airworthy campaign world, and you understand the rules, and you've gotten your players all on board, then everything is going to go smoothly. And don't let somebody run up and try and jump into the cockpit with you because they think they know better. If they're truly that sharp on the rules, give them a turn as Dungeon Master one day and find out. That's what we're saying here. That's what this paragraph is all about. Take this paragraph out of the PDF, select all, or go put it on a scanner and photocopy it, print it out, and put it in the front of your Dungeon Master's Guide. It's that important. And it's important to keep in mind. This doesn't mean you have to be ugly or argumentative with players who have questions about rules. That doesn't mean that you don't compromise with your players. What it does mean is that you are in charge. You have to have things ordered and orderly. You cannot let chaos reign at your table. Because if your order is passengers on board in the air, then we'll do pre-flight, then we'll do a systems check. I know I keep coming back to that, but it's really the best analogy. So I hope you guys take that to heart. I hope you take that and you hold it close to you as we go on this journey of being a first edition AD&D Dungeon Master. Conformity to major systems. The broad parameters of the rules. Consider, I don't know, consider an Elder Scrolls game where you can have a carry limit of 500, let's say. You're very strong. And you're carrying 499. And you pick up something that weighs 1. And you stop moving. You're rooted to the spot. Or you're moving very slowly. Would you really just tell a character that they stop, like there's a platinum piece on the ground, I'll pick that up. You stop moving. You're over encumbered. It was too much. You're frozen in place. No, that's ridiculous. The game could come to a crashing end as they decided what to keep or what to get rid of. I'm not saying ignore encumbrance, quite the opposite. We'll talk about encumbrance and its importance and the subsystems of encumbrance from a dungeon mastering point of view in the future. But I'm here to tell you, do things that make obvious sense. Do things that make obvious sense. So I hope you guys find that interpretation of the afterword to be helpful. Now, I said I wanted to talk about adversarial DMing, and I do want to talk about that. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I feel like adversarial DMing has gotten a bad rap, and I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about adversarial DMing for a little bit. Being an adversarial DM does not mean being a jerk constantly to your players and crushing their fun at every turn. Have you ever had a flat? It's like out of nowhere. Not like you went out, your tire was kind of low. You thought, I'll drive up to the Wawa and get some free air, and then plap, plap, plap. No, I mean, you're just pliving down the highway and suddenly blap, 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 blap. Okay, what the hell? And you're just like, why me, universe? Why? Why did this happen to me? The universe doesn't care. The universe is an adversarial DM. The universe will throw you curves all the time. When you pull over into the grass, and lucky you're next to a dead armadillo in the summer heat while you're trying to change your tire, you look over and there's a $50 bill that's been blown into the grass. The universe does that sometimes. You as the dungeon master are the universe. Your players might complain that they put on a cloak of poisonousness. No saving throw, they die. Actually, I don't have the cloak of poisonousness stats in front of me, but there are plenty of you don't get a saving throw, you die moments. Sphere of Annihilation. No, it does not. Well, I put my hand to it. It doesn't just disintegrate your hand. It doesn't have an arbitrary limit. You touch a Sphere of Annihilation and you are DED dead. No saving throw. Your character dies. Body's still there, not destroyed by a Sphere of Annihilation, just stabbed to death, beaten to death, whatever. All right, we're going to cast Raised Dead on you, Bob. Roll. Oh, I got 100. Can I get another shot? Nope. Nope. Bob, roll up another character. The universe giveth, the universe taketh away. That's just how it goes sometimes. How many of you guys have ever played against a really good poker player before you had a handle on the game? Or shot hoops against someone who was really good at basketball? Or played chess against someone who was ranked? I've done all three things. I got my butt kicked over and over. Until, at least in the case of the poker match, I won. And it felt fantastic. When you throw everything you can fairly, and I'm going to come back to that term in a minute, fairly at your players and their characters, and they still overcome it, and you sit back and you fold your arms, and a Sararak's shattered skull pieces are clattering on the floor of the Tomb of Horrors. The dust that was Drelsna is stirring faintly in the eddies and air currents of the inner sphere in S4. Loth has crumbled away into nothingness, and her plane of the abyss has swirled out of existence, depositing the players back on Earth. Be proud of yourself, Dungeon Masters. Be very proud of yourself, and be proud of your players. And the players should have that moment There is no character class, no character combination of magic items, spells, or tactics that I, as a dungeon master, cannot throw enough huge ancient red dragons at to overcome. 100 huge ancient red dragons fly overhead, targeting your magic user. I wish them out of existence. Okay, that was your one use of wish. 200 more fly over the horizon straight at your magic user, and so on and etc. High grade greetings. By the way, Mobile Suit Gundam, love it. Or is high grade? Oh gosh, was high grade in Armor Trooper Dorvac? I don't remember. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted. Well, I'm gonna, you know what, Mage's Musings, I'm gonna put that up here, and I wanna because I want to address exactly what you said. Your players are many. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 15, 20, 24 of them. I have DM'd groups of all those sizes and everything in between. It's on your pick. A+, a high grade. Oh, okay, I gotcha. I was thinking too deep. I was thinking Japanese model kits. Thank you. And I guess it ultimately comes down to your definition of adversarial. So take my definition of adversarial in this lesson as the definition, which I will be broadly using. I mean, you know, your type of adversarial DM might step out of the room to get a beer, another piece of pizza, whatever, and the game is effectively paused, right? The characters are sitting around their campfire, or maybe the game hasn't even started yet, and the players are talking about what they're going to do. You overhear them, and then you lay plans in that the outside world could not have possibly been aware of to defeat the exact thing that they're talking about. That's a kind of adversarial DM, and that is just being a jerk. That is the killer dungeon master. My kind of adversarial DMing means the players are sitting in a tavern discussing their plans for sneaking into the Baron's inner keep and robbing him blind. And you say, okay, you guys are discussing this out loud in character. Oh, yeah. We're doing that. Someone in there is going to hear. Someone in there is going to hear. So those are two kinds of adversarial DMs, and I tend, when I say adversarial DM, to mean the latter, not the former. Just so we're clear. But that is a very good point. That is a very good point. Now, to go back to what I was saying, as a dungeon master, you have it in your power to slay characters seemingly at a whim. The moon falls out of the sky and destroys the continent your 20th level characters are standing on. There's no saving throw for that. You're all dead. Your first level characters enter the dungeon. They hear a clanging and ratcheting sound. A portcullis shuts behind them. They hear a menacing laugh, and 10 hill giants step out of the shadows. 4 first level characters. You can do it all day. Multiple times a day. It's easy to kill characters. Any level, any class. The difficult thing to do as a dungeon master is to take them right up to the point where they might die and then leaving it in their hands. Keeping the players alive is the challenge that you have as a dungeon master. And when the dust finally settles again and all is said and done, if you came out as the victor, Loth smirks. She's polymorphed them all into worms. She scoops them up into a jar, sets them on her mantelpiece, and there they stay forever. Drelsna drains the last delicious drops of cherry juice from the throat of the last character who had a chance to flee. The party's remaining characters that don't have their souls sucked out by a Sararak are cursed and teleported at random hundreds of miles away into the deepest parts of the jungle. That's life. But when the party wins, enjoy that moment, because you have achieved the highest state of Zen dungeon mastering. You have thrown the heftiest challenges, not necessarily out of those modules, but even of your own creation. And your party has outlasted, outwitted, and outplayed you, dungeon master. And enjoy that, because your players will absolutely enjoy having played to the hilt, not one whit below their abilities, and beaten everything you threw at them. And when they do, they will experience a great rush, and they'll want to do it again and again and again as players. You've created something that they'll want to return to and enjoy over and over again. That is the positivity. That is the light side of adversarial DMing. And you, dungeon masters, you unquestionably should be engaging in that kind of tough love, if you will. Because no player wants to sit down at a game of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and be spoon-fed mountains of treasure, shops full of magic items, libraries full of spells, where they just spam the I win button over and over again. They don't. Players don't want that. They'll get bored with it. Fire up Doom, IDDQD, IDKFA, idclip, go to the exit. Level after level after level after level. You can beat Doom 2 in about 6 or 7 minutes doing that. Was it fun? No. Was managing exactly the right number of rockets to take down that cyber demon between you and the exit, and then doing it on ultraviolence mode, was that fun? Yes. So that is what I mean when I say be an adversarial DM. Take your players' characters right to the edge of death, and then see what happens. The players will make the decision. You don't have to run first level characters through the Tomb of Horrors. You can if you want to. It's an easy way to frustrate your players, cause a lot of hurt feelings at the table. What is the real-life tabletop version of a video game speed run? I don't know. That's a good question. Fuchsia. I don't know. It's going to vary module to module and campaign world to campaign world, right? I mean, spam disintegrate spells around the Tomb of Horrors to bore a tunnel straight to where Sararak's at. Cast Transmute Rock to Mud on the table he's on, the stone table. Hit it with Dispel Magic once his skull sinks down in. Cast Reduce on all the platinum walls, pocket them, and leave. I think that would be a pretty good speed run of Tomb of Horrors. Oh, Robert, that sounds dire. That sounds dire. DM kills your characters, rip the DM screen in half. Youch. But anyway, that's just 2 points I wanted to go on. Now, the next time, which I think will be next week, I don't believe we have a guest lined up for next Thursday or next Wednesday for that matter. We've got some open days next week. Yes, we do. So we're going to be getting into some fun stuff, some deep dive stuff next week. But we don't have a guest for next Thursday. Next Thursday, we're going to start talking about systems. All right. So definitely bring your questions and your thinking caps for systems. The real life tabletop version of a video game cheat code. Those things are very rare. A super chat. I've jokingly suggested that people could make things happen in the game in a super chat. And some people accused me of letting people alter my adventure by super chatting me. But I can assure you, the one time that I got a super chat and then something happened, what happened was already well planned. It was actually Doomsword's thief being struck with piercers. And you bring up a very good player in certain, a very good player. That's a word. My speech center, my brain said, that's a word. Say it. You bring up a very good salient point, insert name here. For every one bad DM, there are droves of bad players that are entirely self-oblivious. And I see this, I hear this when I put on D&D horror stories to listen to while I'm working. And some of the, well, the dungeon master did this, and oh my God, we were all just trying to get through his crappy game. I'm like, his game wasn't crappy. You, as a player, are a bad player. He told you in advance, this is how his world works. That you couldn't hew the line to conformity in it. It's not the fault of his world. He didn't arbitrarily change it midstream. Some of them do, many of them do, but occasionally there is a streamer who does that. I don't like to name the D&D horror stories streamers, guys. I don't like to give out their to drive that. Oh, Fuchsia, thank you very much. Thank you. This cheat code unlocks all sorts of emotes for RTM. Thank you. A smile and happiness. I appreciate the super. But frankly, of them, the only one who will absolutely take horror stories that the others read, because they all read the same horror stories off Reddit, guys. It's their business model on YouTube, is Den of Drake. And this dude will go in and read a horror story that someone else posted or that someone posted on a subreddit, and other YouTube D&D RPG horror story guys have covered and said, wow, yeah, what a jerk. Yeah. And he's like, no. You put up with this for 8 sessions, sat there meekly, and then threw a fit when the DM did exactly what they said they were going to do. Oh, no, it's the consequences of my actions. So I really appreciate his input on those sorts of things. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Insert name here. Yeah, Praxis. I mean, we're going to get into some nuts and bolts stuff. I want to largely avoid a bunch of that stuff because I have actually, we did a big deep dive a couple of years ago on psionics in AD&D. But I mean, we can talk about things like that. We definitely can. I'm open to hearing your words about that. Wenger says, in case of bad players, maybe hint that a decision may lead to a very bad end, but in the end, if the decision is made, let the dice stand where they roll. I would not give out too many hints like that. If a player employs a spell like contact other plane or augury or something like that, players have ample resources at their abilities to find out what, how bad things can go pear-shaped. Mage's Musings, let me give you 3 pieces of advice about psionics. And we'll talk about this when we come to psionics at the appropriate time. But I want you can scroll back and write this down after I say it. Seriously curve down the psionic point recharge. Get rid of or seriously nerf cellular adjustment. And finally, for goodness sake, move psionic combat into regular combat. Even if it all happens in the first segment because of the speed of mind powers, don't make all your players wait while you fight one player psionically. Just put it in the normal combat round and come back to it over and over again. So that is my desperate plea to you. And psionic predators can curb abuse. And the heretic, if you're using psionic powers, use a psionic random encounter table. And remember, there are spells, many spells, including Cure Light Wounds, that can trigger a psionic wandering creature encounter. Imagine a first level party. I'm going to cast Cure Light Wounds on Dave's character. Okay, rattle, rattle, psionic encounter, rattle, rattle, Asmodeus. Hello, worms. It can happen. It can happen. And it definitely, if you've got a cleric, who gets psionic powers, start taking away their healing spells if they're spamming cellular adjustment constantly. Gods are jealous, even the lawful good ones. I don't care if you have a lovely female cleric of Maris, the Urdian goddess of love. A little bit of a jealous streak in her. She's not going to be happy. She's not going to be happy about you ignoring her divine glory, her divine love that brings healing and comfort to all for your mind powers. But we'll talk about that more when we get there. Any thoughts tonight? Any additional thoughts from you guys on the topics we have discussed, on the afterword, on adversarial gaming? I want to hear it. And I'm watching you guys talk as I'm not ignoring you. It looks like I'm not looking at you, but I'm actually looking right at you when I'm doing that. Here, I'm not looking at you. Here, I'm paying attention to you. I think it's like some kind of a teleprompter, that goes up, so I can just glance over and be like, "Oh yeah, that's a good point. Good point, Vinger." There's the adversarial DMing where the DM sets player versus player. Now, you go back to Dungeons and Dragons War Games roots, and it was already there. Players were already ready to be set at each other's throats because, you have players who a couple of months ago were ready, willing, and able to unleash their armies in chainmail or Battle of Five Armies or whatever, and absolutely smash their best friend, right? Now you're being told you're all adventuring in a dungeon. Well, you just carry that forward. What's Bob got in his belt pouch? Oh, Bob, do you tell him? No. Pass a note to the DM. I steal Bob's belt pouch. It's very much like that. Now I'm going to tell you, just in my campaign, my brother still hates me 40 years later for backstabbing one of his guys. See, there you go. 40 years ago. My take on the racial preference table is not necessarily this is what your character should do, but this is what your character might expect from NPCs. The halfling's going to walk into a village that is largely peopled by half-orcs. That doesn't necessarily mean that the half-orc with the party dislikes the halfling. Yeah, dwarves versus elves is a classic one. So, but I hope that's kind of lent some insight to you guys about, how that's supposed to work. And again, I'll take your questions now. Anything like that. The DM set us up. A disguised assassin put amongst his targets, killed said targets. Yeah. Oof. I mean, one thing, this is advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not paranoia. And listen, you and your players, you guys do you guys. Don't misunderstand what I'm about to say as an insistence that you should do things a certain specific way and only a certain specific way. But that said, without foreknowledge of players, like if you're playing Paranoia by West End Games, everybody knows that their lives are forfeit the minute the game starts. It's a matter of when, not if. But if you're playing a game of AD&D and your dungeon master has handed you a note that says, your character's mission is to kill Bob's fighter, and he hands Bob a note that says, your character's mission is to kill Jim's cleric, and then he hands Jim a note that says, your character's mission is to kill Sally's magic user, you know, and you're just sitting back and watching the Paranoia. I don't know that I'd like that, and I certainly won't recommend that as a DMing style. That is beyond adversarial. That is being combative for no readily apparent reason. Damien, psionic characters in 1E can regain psionic points walking around and doing heavy labor. They just gain fewer. So like walking through the dungeon, they're still going to regain points. Psionics need some adjustments. Well, yes, Lux. The 200 red dragons comment was literally just a bit of a jape. I'm just saying that as a dungeon master, you have infinite resources at your disposal to bump off a character. The players generally only have a few resources to not have that happen, and they will be exhausted. And at that point, if you want to continue to curb stomp them, well, you can. And that's why you don't. My goodness, there's a lot of people watching right now. We got 40 people watching the stream. Hello. How are you? We're probably going to wrap in the next 10 minutes or so. We'll call it the next 12 minutes and 10 seconds. How about that? Most epic setup was a lawful good female drow cleric. Ew. I'm just, Jack knows, I'm just kidding with him. Versus your male chaotic evil magic user lasted a couple years, embroiled much of the Western Flan in total war. Well, that sounds pretty epic. 36 likes, 40 viewers. Yep. To kill her. That's right on. But anyway, in these last last 10 minutes or so, any questions at all, now's your chance to ask them about this topic. I don't want to spend too much time show after show focusing on what was said in previous discussions. We want to move forward. What determines a random encounter when traveling outside? What determines a random character when traveling outside is, generally speaking, if you're traveling across the wilderness, be it forests, mountains, desert, the ocean, plains, Plains, not Planes. Just anything you bump into. And a random encounter is not necessarily with something. It could be somewhere. Your random encounter could be a castle. Maybe you've never been this way before. Maybe you've only been told that Keoland is in that direction. Okay, we start going in that direction. We've never been to Keo land. We know nothing about land. Oh, look, what's that over this ridge? Why, it's a castle. There's a standard flying over it. We're met by a group of guards. Hello, Pansuza. Greetings to you. Vigor, it depends. This is getting a little to inside mechanics, but we can go down this way since you were kind enough to ask. Heavily patrolled or built up areas, and I generally treat this within 1 hex of a major city or the hex the city is in. It is a D20 roll. On a 1, you have a random encounter, and 75% of those encounters will be with a patrol. So, you're in the same hex as the city of Greyhawk and you spend a day outside the city. Well, let's roll a D20. I rolled a 1. Now roll percentile dice to see what the encounter was. So the odds that you bump into, an in-lair huge ancient red dragon right outside the city of Greyhawk are diminishingly small. Now, once you get 3 to 4 hexes outside of a major city, now you start rolling a D12 for every period indicated in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And there, a 1 indicates a random encounter. And these encounters are rolled straight off the matrices. They are not 75% patrols and what have you. And when you're in just the vast howling wilderness, again, jungle, desert, ocean, plains, forest, mountains, hills, broken terrain, rough terrain, what have you, swamps, marshes, then it is a D10 per check period per the chart in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then again, it is a direct roll on the monster encounter table. And again, it could be a city. It could be a town. You could randomly encounter a town or a city. That doesn't mean it's wandering all over the place. Just at that point, you've encountered a settlement. Now, you as the game master may not wish to do that. You may wish to have your settlements vary out, but randomly encountering a settlement can be a good thing. You could establish, hey, here's a town with 3,000 people. That's a good size city in D&D terms. That is correct, Dirty History and Hobbies. Thank you. You're quite welcome, Vinger. So, Lux, I'm gonna talk a little bit here in the few minutes we have left about professional dungeon masterings because I am one. I say why not? Why if someone really wants to play and they're absolutely willing to pay you, why not? It's like, hey, we want a guy to play acoustic guitar at our bar. We want a magician at our kid's birthday party. Why not? It's a service. It's something you can do. It requires more than a little bit of skill. Now, I don't think you say, hey, I'm hosting a game at the Android's Dungeon. Cool, let's go. All right, pay up $10 a piece. No, but I think if you advertise your services as a professional DM, which I've done, and I've done very well for my client, I think it's an absolutely cromulent thing to do. Do I enjoy adding surprise? Oh, good Lord, yes. We would be here. I would run out of time to go to my other interview, which is in just a few minutes, if I started talking about all the surprise stuff just within my own Castle Greyhawk. I've told you guys about my adventure I ran down there where the party encountered the KLF. That's right. Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cotty. So many surprises like that throughout a campaign, and you should definitely look. Spice your campaign world up with such surprises. The thought of getting paid to TPK a group with an evil gazebo encounter is strangely tempting somehow. Yeah, no, it definitely can be. Oh my gosh. Well, so 5 more minutes, guys. 5 more minutes. Any questions at all? Any questions from you at all? Just let me know. Say the word. So tomorrow night, we will be back. We will be playing Gamma World tomorrow night, because tomorrow night's Friday. Good Lord, I can't believe we're already back to Friday. We will be doing Gamma World from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock and a 30-minute lead up. What have I got in my pocket? Sweet FA. What is my favorite character class? Paladin. Tell you a story that starts with, well, there I was. Well, there I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax on the front porch of his house in Lake Geneva. I had rolled up a dwarven cleric, and Gary gave us all little quirks to our personalities, and mine happened to be a great affinity for cheese. And another guy who was playing with us got the same affinity for his dwarf. So we decided that we were brothers from another mother and would often walk around talking about and pontificating on and waxing poetic about the great cheeses we had enjoyed in all of our various dungeon adventures. And when my character fell into, or his character fell into a pit, my character called down to him and said, "Was your cheese damaged, brother?" So there you go. That is the cheese story. Favorite D&D artifact weapon? Oh, artifact weapon. Because many things can be a weapon that don't initially appear to be. You'd start a war with the Jacinth of Inestimable Beauty, for example. But I will say Sword of Kos, tied with Axe of the Dwarvish Lords. How do you deal with groups of good players whose playstyles don't mesh as a single group? Oh, that's a big question. Can we? Can you write that down, stick it next to your computer, or just keep it in your head and ask me when we've got more time? Because we're coming up on wrapping thing up. Favorite artifact: Teeth of the Dalvernar. Why do I hate Kender? Because they were written for the worst types of table disruptive players. They were written for the types of players I don't want to play D&D with. They cater specifically to a play style that is designed to cause emotional stress at the table outside of the game. Holy crap, a dragon. Hand me my arrows, or, I draw my arrows of dragon slaying. You don't have those. Half the party's dead later. I'm sorry, this must have fallen into my pack. die. At any rate, I think that is where we are going to wrap it up. Guys, thank you all for being here this evening. I really appreciated it. I thoroughly enjoyed hanging out with y'all. Fuchsia, thank you very much for the $10 super. That was awesome. We will be back tomorrow night. Again, we'll be playing some classic Gamma World, and we're going to be having a good time. Now, I'm going to leave the banner up for just a second, guys. If you don't know, if you're just new to the show, we have a Patreon, and we also have YouTube memberships. YouTube memberships at the $10 level on either one of those, although you can support the channel for as little as $1. But at the $10 level, every month, you will get a free short form version of a first edition advanced Dungeons and Dragons module written by myself or by my co-host, Kyle Schuant. We lay them out so they look like classic D&D modules, something really cool just to slide in between, say, finishing up A1 through 4 and starting G1, 2, 3. Just a little food for thought. But if you really want to know the best way to support the channel, get the word out there. Tell people about it. Send people over here. Say, hey, this guy's got a pretty good gimmick going on. Because I think I do. But boys and girls, as we ride into the sunset, I will, of course, warn you, stay together in a group. Keep your eyes open, eyes out at all time, because there's owl bears lurking about. Peace. Love you. See ya.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.